Okay, so today we've spent a lot of time talking about how we produce urine, but we don't want to neglect the plumbing aspects of the urinary system. And so on my board, I've drawn a picture of sort of the major players in the urinary system. We had said that we've been talking about all these little nephrons in the two kidneys. And we had said inside of the kidneys, we have a series of pathways that the urine that is formed, it flows through, and then it enters into the renal pelvis, which then becomes the ureter. And we have it on both sides, left and right kidneys, and they're going to introduce the urine into the bladder for storage. And the bladder is like a balloon. It has muscles around it called the detrusor muscles. And so this thing is going to fill up with urine, and it's going to stretch. But before we get to that, we have the ureters that are going to be feeding into the bladder. And now where they feed in is a region that is called the trigon. And so you can see we have an opening from this ureter, and we have an opening from this ureter, and this is in the trigon. And then we have a third opening in the trigon, which is the opening to the urethra. The urethra, of course, carries the urine to the outside. So what's going to happen is the bladder, you're filtering the blood, you're producing this urine, you're secreting and reabsorbing all of that stuff that we've talked about for a number of slides. You're going to end up filling up your bladder, and your bladder is surrounded by a set of muscles called the detrusor muscles. And you also have two different sphincter muscles. So a sphincter is a muscle that closes an opening. So we have an internal sphincter, and then we have another sphincter that's the external sphincter. Well, what happens is as the bladder gets larger and larger, it stretches. What's going to happen is it starts contracting. And so the detrusor muscles are going to start contracting, and they're going to force urine into the urethra past the internal sphincter. So we said we have two different sphincters. We have an internal sphincter and we have an external sphincter. And this part right here that I've been talking about, this is the first steps in a process called micturition. It's urination. Who knew? I mean, micturition is the scientific term for that. Urination is not. So micturition is the process of releasing urine to the outside. So I talked a little bit about the first few steps. I said that you're constantly producing urine, and it gets transported down into the urinary bladder. And as the bladder fills up, eventually it starts stretching, and those muscles called the detrusor muscles start contracting. And they force the urine past the internal sphincter. And so now you've got urine in your urethra. You know what? You can feel that. And you say, oh no, I've got to go. I've got to run to the restroom, right? So what you do is you excuse yourself, you go to the restroom, and then what you do, this external sphincter is under voluntary control. All this other stuff is happening whether you want it to or not. But this external sphincter is under voluntary control. And so when you're ready and you're in the restroom, you open the external sphincter, and then we get this a reflex called the micturition reflex, which causes the detrusor muscles to start really contracting, and it opens the internal sphincter, and you voluntarily have opened the external sphincter, and you release urine to the outside. and that is called micturition. So this is the final video of the urinary system. We'll have one more set of PowerPoints, which will be the digestive system. Okay.